Okay, we're going to resume with the next morning. We have it right. Let's resume with the next morning, starting when we wake up.
Excellent. Let's reset the scene to the beginning of the next morning, incorporating all the elements we've established. The next morning in Juniper, the gentle chirping of early morning bird Pokemon filters through the windows of the cozy cabin in Juniper. A soft knock on the door is followed by Professor Juniper's voice. Good morning. Rise and shine, you two. It's time we got an early start if we want to reach the vicinity of the Dragon's Teeth and begin our search today. The room is filled with the soft light of dawn. The scent of brewing coffee wafts in from another part of the cabin. Are you both ready to get going? Professor Juniper asks as she opens the door slightly, a warm smile on her face. You and Lyra stir, the promise of adventure and the urgency of the injured Pokemon's plight spurring you awake. Your Pokemon, Carnivine, Bellsprout, still in its Pokeball gaining experience, and Celebi are either resting nearby or already stirring with anticipation. Lyra's Cyndaquil yawns and stretches beside her. Morning, Professor, you reply, a sense of readiness in your voice. Lyra nods, already swinging her legs out of bed. Ready when you are. Professor Juniper smiles. Excellent. Why don't you both freshen up, and then we can grab a quick coffee before we set out. Cutscene. Juniper cabin kitchen. The aroma.
Okay, so we step out the cabin and go ahead and let's start the scene where we see the atmosphere.
As you step out of the Juniper cabin, the scene that greets you is striking. The morning sky is a heavy blanket of dark, greyish-blue clouds, so dense that they seem to steal the light from the world. It feels less like the dawn of a new day, and more like the lingering twilight of the previous one. The air is still, and carries a cool dampness that settles on your skin. The familiar landscape of Juniper, usually vibrant with morning light, is now muted and somber. The trees lining the path stand as dark, almost black silhouettes against the oppressive sky. Their leaves rustle softly in a breeze you can feel but barely see. The distant peaks of the Dragon's Teeth are completely swallowed by the low-hanging cloud cover, adding an element of the unknown to your journey. Lyra shivers slightly, pulling the collar of her jacket higher. It feels eerie, she murmurs, her Cyndaquil nuzzling her hand as if seeking reassurance. Professor Juniper surveys the scene with a thoughtful, slightly concerned expression. This is an unusual sky. It could simply be a persistent weather system, but I can't shake the feeling that it might be something more, something influenced by the region we're heading towards. Her gaze drifts towards the obscured direction of the dark forest. Celebi, usually a burst of vibrant energy, hovers close to you, its movements a little less playful than usual. Its red eyes seem to absorb the dim light, and it occasionally glances nervously at the heavy clouds above. Carnivine, too, appears more subdued, its leafy head slowly turning as if trying to take in the unusual atmosphere. You feel a sense of foreboding settle in the pit of your stomach. This is not the bright, hopeful start to a rescue mission you might have envisioned. The very air seems thick with a silent anticipation, a hint of the challenges that might lie ahead. What are your initial thoughts or comments as you take in this unsettling morning? Do you voice your concerns, try to remain optimistic, or perhaps focus on the task at hand to dispel the growing unease?
Wow, this looks really weird, but at least it's not raining. So, how much time did we lose by taking this detour to the Elder's house? Are we still going to the Pokemon Center? Lyra, what's up? You awake?
You voice your observations, a mix of concern and a telesh to find a silver lining in the strange atmosphere. Well, this looks really weird, you say, your gaze sweeping across the dim landscape. But at least it's not raining, right? You turn to Professor Juniper, curious about the impact of your detour. Professor, how much time do you think we lost by going to the Elder's house? Are we still on track to reach the Pokemon Center at a reasonable time? Then, you address Lyra, noticing her quiet demeanor. Lyra, what's up? You awake and ready to go? Lyra nods, though her expression remains a little troubled as she continues to look at the sky. Yeah, I'm awake. Just, this sky is creeping me out a little. Cyndaquil lets out a soft quill-quill, as if echoing her sentiment. Professor Juniper considers your question about the detour. The visit to the Elder did set us back a few hours, but it was crucial for understanding the situation and getting his guidance. As for the Pokemon Center, our immediate priority is the injured Pokemon near the Dragon's Teeth. Depending on its condition and the challenges we face along the way, a visit to a proper Pokemon Center might have to wait until after the rescue. She gestures towards the path. Our focus now should be reaching the area where the Pokemon was last seen. The sooner we get there, the better its chances. She looks at both you and Lyra, her expression firm but reassuring. Let's not dwell on the unusual weather or the time we've spent. We're together, we're prepared, and we have a clear goal. Let's move forward with determination.
At that, Celebi, like, she perks up. So we start walking down the path, and we start walking, and we'll see what happens first. An hour goes by with just eerie chirps and sounds of agitated Pokemon until the first encounter. So we continue walking, and a little bit of time goes by, maybe 30 minutes, and nothing happens. We just hear the eerie sounds of the Pokemon disturbed in the woods, and everyone's kind of quiet until the first encounter happens.
You continue walking down the path, the heavy, dim atmosphere casting a pall over the initial part of your journey. The silence among your group is palpable, broken only by the soft crunch of your footsteps on the path and the rustling of leaves in the unseen breeze. The eerie sounds of Pokemon calling out from the depths of the woods, strange cries and rustles that seem amplified by the unusual stillness of the morning, create a sense of unease. 30 minutes pass in this quiet tension. The path winds gently, taking you deeper into the wilderness surrounding Juniper, the oppressive sky a constant presence overhead. You remain alert, your senses heightened by the strange ambiance, but no visible Pokemon have yet crossed your path. Lyra walks beside you, her gaze darting towards the shadowy tree line, Cyndaquil close at her side. Professor Juniper walks with a steady, focused pace, her Leafeon moving silently beside her, its senses undoubtedly taking in more than you can perceive. Celebi flits ahead, occasionally pausing to hover and listen to the strange sounds emanating from the woods. Just as a sense of monotony begins to settle in, a sudden rustling in the undergrowth to your right breaks the silence. A moment later, a Pokemon bursts onto the path. It's a Purloin. This Purloin looks particularly agitated. Its fur is slightly ruffled, and it hisses, its sharp claws extended. Its eyes dart around nervously, as if it's been startled or is on edge due to the strange atmosphere. The sudden appearance of the Purloin and its aggressive posture shatter the quiet tension. What is your immediate reaction? Do you prepare for battle, try to calm the Purloin, or take some other action?
Celebi, since she's a low level, she doesn't know much. She goes forward to investigate, not knowing what will happen. But
Celebi, ever curious despite the unusual atmosphere, seems to sense the Purloin isn't a significant threat. With a cheerful chirp, it flits forward, its red eyes wide with innocent curiosity. It doesn't seem to recognize the Purloin's agitated state. As Celebi approaches, hovering just a few feet away, the Purloin's hissing intensifies. It takes a step back, its claws still extended, its gaze fixed warily on the approaching mythical Pokemon. Celebi, be careful. You call out, a note of caution in your voice. Professor Juniper also steps forward slightly. Purloin can be territorial, especially if they feel threatened, but Celebi, in its innocent naivete, continues to drift closer, perhaps thinking the Purloin wants to play. It lets out a soft, melodic chime, as if offering a friendly greeting. The Purloin, however, doesn't seem to interpret Celebi's approach as friendly. Suddenly, it lunges forward with surprising speed, its sharp claws aimed at the unsuspecting Celebi. What do? Do you call Celebi back, send out Carnivine to intercept, or take some other action to protect the mythical Pokemon?
Celebi summons a ball of vines and covers up into a little ball of vines. Purloin hits it and rolls away, and Bellsprout lunges into action.
In a flash, Celebi reacts with surprising agility. Even as the Purloin lunges, Celebi emits a soft green glow. and a tangle of thorny vines erupts from the ground, swirling around it and forming a protective sphere just as the purloin's claws make contact. The purloin strikes the ball of vines, its claws snagging momentarily before it's thrown off balance by the thorny barrier. It tumbles a short distance away, landing on its feet with a surprised hiss, its attention now fully focused on the sudden defense. Before the purloin can react further, a green blur shoots past you and Lyra. Bellsprout, having been in its Pokeball, has now launched itself into the fray with surprising speed and determination. It bounces on its root-like feet, its leafy head swaying aggressively as it faces the startled purloin. "Bellsprout," you exclaim, impressed by its quick reaction. Lyra looks surprised. "Wow, Bellsprout's got some energy." Professor Juniper nods. "Excellent initiative." Bellsprout is eager to protect its friend. The purloin, now facing a new and more direct threat, seems to hesitate, its initial aggression momentarily quelled by Bellsprout's sudden and energetic attack. What does Bellsprout do next? Does it launch an attack, or does it simply stand its ground, intimidating the purloin? And how do you intend to direct Bellsprout in this unexpected encounter?
I step forward and I ask the purloin, "What's wrong? Is everything okay?" And I look up at the sky, seemingly undisturbed by this whole incident, and I'm calm and I say, "Purloin, what's wrong?"
You step forward calmly, your demeanor contrasting sharply with the brief burst of action. You address the agitated purloin in a soothing voice, your gaze steady and non-threatening. "Hey there," you say gently, looking at the purloin. "What's wrong? Is everything okay?" As you speak to the purloin, you glance up at the heavy, dark sky, your expression seemingly unbothered by the earlier near attack. Your calm demeanor and direct question seem to take the purloin by surprise. It stops its hissing, its narrowed eyes blinking slowly as it takes in your relaxed posture. Bellsprout remains poised and ready, its leafy head still swaying slightly, but it doesn't make any further aggressive moves, waiting for your lead. Celebi lowers its vine-covered form slightly, its curious red eyes also fixed on the purloin. Lyra looks at you, a bit surprised by your calm approach. "You're just going to talk to it," she whispers. Professor Juniper watches with interest, her hand resting gently on Leafeon's back, observing how the situation unfolds. The purloin continues to eye you warily, its ears twitching as it processes your words in your calm energy. Its ruffled fur slowly begins to settle. It lets out a soft, almost whimpering sound, a stark contrast to its earlier aggressive hisses. What do you do or say next to try and understand why this purloin was so agitated? Do you take another step closer, offer it something, or simply wait for it to respond?
I ask Celebi if it can use a move to soothe or heal the purloin.
You maintain your calm and gentle tone, taking a small, non-threatening step closer to the purloin. "It's all right," you say softly, your voice reassuring. You seem a little upset. "Is there something wrong?" You then turn slightly to Bellsprout and give it a gentle nod. "Bellsprout, use Vine Whip to gently offer it some of the salad you've been carrying." Bellsprout, understanding your intent, extends one of its vine-like arms, and a small, leafy portion of the fresh salad it often nibbles on appears at the end. It slowly and deliberately offers the salad towards the purloin. The purloin watches the approaching salad with cautious curiosity. Its ears twitch, and it sniffs the air tentatively. The offering of food, combined with your calm demeanor and soothing words, seems to be having a disarming effect. Its tense posture begins to relax ever so slightly. Lyra watches with a mixture of surprise and fascination. "You think it's just hungry?" she whispers. Professor Juniper nods slowly. "It's possible. Sometimes aggression in wild Pokemon can be a sign of distress, hunger being one of the most common causes. Leafeon remains alert but doesn't make any move to interfere." Celebi unwraps itself from the ball of vines, its curious red eyes fixed on the purloin as it considers the offered salad. The purloin takes another hesitant step, its gaze shifting between you and the offered food. It seems to be weighing its options, the earlier agitation slowly giving way to a flicker of interest. What happens next? Does the purloin approach the salad? How do you continue to interact with it?
I kneel down and look at the purloin and say, "Purloin, what's wrong? Did you see something out there?"
You continue to speak to the purloin in a soft, reassuring tone, your gaze gentle but direct. Hey there, little one, you say, your voice calm and soothing, almost like a lullaby. What's wrong? Did you see something out there that scared you? You gesture vaguely towards the dense undergrowth from which it emerged, your movements slow and non-threatening. Your continued calm seems to be having a noticeable effect on the purloin. Its tense posture softens further, and it takes another tentative step towards the offered salad, its wary gaze flicking between the food and your face. Bellsprout holds the salad steady, its leafy offering a silent gesture of goodwill. Celebi hovers nearby, its initial defensiveness gone, now observing the interaction with quiet curiosity. Lyra watches with a growing sense of understanding. Maybe it was just startled, she whispers. Professor Juniper nods. Patience and a gentle approach can often be more effective than force when dealing with a distressed Pokémon. The purloin takes another small step, its nose twitching as it gets closer to the fragrant salad. It lets out a soft, almost questioning meow, its earlier aggression seemingly replaced by a mixture of apprehension and hunger. Will the purloin finally approach and take the offered food? How will you react to its next move?
The purloin eats and then follows ahead, scouts ahead, walks ahead for a little while as we continue down the path.
The purloin, its initial wariness finally overcome by hunger and your gentle demeanor, cautiously approaches Bellsprout's offering. It sniffs the salad delicately before taking a small bite. It seems to enjoy the taste, and soon it's nibbling more confidently at the leafy greens. As the purloin eats, its tense posture completely melts away. It looks up at you with softer eyes, a stark contrast to its earlier aggression. Once it has finished the small portion of salad, it lingers for a moment, as if considering its next move. Then, to your surprise, the purloin turns and glances down the path ahead. With a little flick of its tail, it begins to walk forward, not running away, but seemingly leading the way. It moves with a newfound confidence, its earlier agitation completely gone. Well, I'll be, Lyra says, watching the purloin with amazement. It's like it wants to help us. Professor Juniper nods, a thoughtful expression on her face. It seems your kindness has earned its trust. Perhaps it knows the area or has encountered whatever is causing the unrest among the local Pokémon. Celebi flits ahead, keeping pace with the purloin, its earlier apprehension replaced with curiosity about its new companion. Carnivine lumbers along beside you, its leafy maw now looking more relaxed. And so, your small group continues down the path, now with an unexpected guide leading the way. The dark, heavy sky still hangs overhead, but the atmosphere feels slightly lighter, a small glimmer of hope sparked by the purloin's change of heart. What do you do as you follow the purloin? Do you comment on this unexpected turn of events, try to communicate further with the purloin, or simply continue onward, trusting its lead?
We end up walking to a hillside and the purloin stops and it signifies at the edge of the forest it wouldn't go any further, and then the path starts walking down a steep hill steep hill.
The purloin leads you along the winding path for a while, its movements sure and purposeful. Eventually, it brings you to the edge of a steep hillside. The forest here seems to thicken, the trees growing closer together and their branches intertwining overhead, creating deeper shadows even under the heavy sky. The purloin stops at the very edge of the tree line, just before the ground drops away into a steep incline. It turns back to look at you, Lyra, and Professor Juniper, letting out a soft meow and gesturing with its head towards the downward slope. It seems hesitant to venture further itself, as if the terrain ahead is beyond its comfort zone, or perhaps holds something it wishes to avoid. It looks like this is as far as our guide goes, Lyra observes, looking at the purloin. Thanks for the help, little guy. Professor Juniper nods in agreement. Indeed. It seems the forest ahead is not to its liking. She turns her attention to the steep hill stretching down before you. Well, it looks like we'll have to proceed on foot from here. The hillside is indeed quite steep, covered in loose soil, rocks, and patches of tough-looking grass. It descends into what appears to be a lower part of the forest, the trees there even denser and darker. The air in that direction feels cooler and carries a faint, earthy scent. What is your approach to descending this steep hill? Do you take it slowly and carefully, relying on your footing? Do you have your Pokémon assist in any way? Or do you have another plan for navigating this challenging terrain?
Just at that moment, you know what Carnivine and Bellsprout like to do.
At that moment, as you're assessing the steep descent, Carnivine and Bellsprout seem to have an idea. Carnivine, with its strong, vine-like limb.
No, Carnivine and Bellsprout start wrestling and tumble down the hill.
Just as you are considering a careful descent, Carnivine and Bellsprout suddenly engage in a playful scuffle. What starts as a bit of friendly jostling quickly escalates. Carnivine's vines wrap playfully around Bellsprout, who retaliates by bouncing and tangling its own vine-like body. Before you can say anything, their wrestling match carries them right to the edge of the steep incline. With a surprised yelp from Bellsprout and a muffled leafy groan from Carnivine, they lose their footing and begin to tumble down the hill. They roll and bounce down the slope, a tangle of vines and leaves, kicking up loose soil and small rocks as they go. It looks more comical than dangerous, though you can't help but feel a pang of worry. Carnivine, Bellsprout, you call out, a mixture of amusement and concern in your voice. Lyra stares wide-eyed. Well, that's one way to get down the hill. Professor Juniper raises an eyebrow, a wry smile playing on her lips. Indeed, perhaps not the most elegant approach, but certainly efficient? Celebi flits down after them, its red eyes following their chaotic descent with apparent curiosity. You watch as your two Pokémon tumble their way to the bottom of the steep hill. They finally come to a stop in a heap of tangled vines and leaves, looking slightly dazed but seemingly unharmed. Bellsprout shakes its head, a few leaves stuck to its bulbous form, while Carnivine unwraps its vines with a soft grunt. Are you two all right? You call down, your voice carrying over the slope. Bellsprout bounces up and down, letting out a cheerful cry. Carnivine waves a leafy vine in what seems to be a sign of okay. Looks like they're fine, Lyra says, a chuckle escaping her. Professor Juniper shakes her head, still smiling slightly. Well, that certainly broke the tension. It seems your Pokémon have their own unique way of navigating obstacles. Now that Carnivine and Bellsprout have unintentionally cleared a path and reached the bottom, how do you and Lyra proceed down the steep hill? Do you carefully pick your way down, or do you find a less chaotic method?
We carefully pick our way down the hill. It only takes a few minutes to get to the bottom, and when we get to the bottom, we realize we can't no longer see the horizon and which way the hill is, but Juniper knows which direction to go.
You and Lyra carefully pick your way down the steep hillside, mindful of the loose soil and rocks. You take your time, using sturdy roots and outcroppings as handholds, and in a few minutes you both reach the bottom without any tumbles. As you arrive on the relatively flat ground at the base of the hill, you immediately notice a significant change in your surroundings. The dense foliage of the lower forest completely obscures the horizon in every direction. The heavy, dark sky is still visible overhead, but there are no distant landmarks to guide you. It's easy to feel disoriented in this enclosed, shadowy environment. Whoa, Lyra says, looking around. I have no idea which way is up anymore. You scan the dense trees and undergrowth, realizing she's right. Without a clear view of the sky or any distant landmarks, your sense of direction is completely lost. However, Professor Juniper seems unfazed. She takes a moment to observe the subtle cues around you, the direction of the moss on the tree trunks, the slight bend of the leaves, and perhaps an innate sense honed from years of navigating the wilderness. Don't worry, she says confidently, pointing towards a particularly dense section of the forest. We need to head that way. I have a sense of the general direction of the dragon's teeth from the elders' descriptions, and the subtle lay of the land. Her Leafon gives a soft cry and moves in the direction Professor Juniper indicated, as if confirming her guidance. Carnivine and Bellsprout, recovered from their tumble, also seem to be looking in that direction with a sense of purpose. Even Celebi, after a brief, curious exploration of a nearby glowing mushroom, returns to hover near Professor Juniper, seemingly trusting her lead. So, with the horizon lost to the dense forest, you and Lyra follow Professor Juniper and her Pokémon into the deeper shadows, trusting her knowledge to guide you towards your destination. The air here is cooler and carries the damp, earthy scent you notice from the top of the hill, along with a hint of something wilder and more mysterious. What are your thoughts as you venture into this disorienting part of the forest? Do you voice any concerns, or do you place your trust entirely in Professor Juniper's guidance?
I complain about how the mud is going to get in my shoes, and then Lyra says, yeah, you have some fascinating shoes, and then Jordan probably interjects with a joke about my fashion.
You trudge through the damp undergrowth, the soil soft and yielding beneath your feet. It's not long before you notice the inevitable consequence. Ugh, you groan, glancing down at your footwear. Great. Just great. I can already feel the mud squishing into my shoes. This is going to be delightful. Lyra glances down at your shoes with a curious expression. Yeah, you do have some fascinating footwear. I don't think I've ever seen anyone wear anything quite like them for hiking. Just as you're about to retort, Jordan's voice, seemingly out of nowhere, cuts through the quiet forest. Oh, please? Complaining about a little mud? Honestly, with those ridiculous things you call shoes, I'm surprised you haven't gotten them stuck in a puddle already. Maybe if you spent less time worrying about your unique fashion sense and more time training, you wouldn't be such a mess. A taunting laughter echoes in your mind, a familiar sting to your pride. Despite not being physically present, her ability to get under your skin remains as sharp as ever. How do you react to Jordan's jab, and how do you feel about Lyra's observation about your fascinating shoes? Do you defend your fashion choices, ignore Jordan, or perhaps focus on the muddy terrain ahead?
I say I always get them stuck in a puddle and I always get them muddy, but your Azumarill always washes them off for me.
You sigh, a hint of resignation in your voice. You know, you're not wrong, Jordan. I do always seem to get them stuck in puddles, and they're perpetually muddy. But hey,
No, her Azurill, or her Pokemon, Jordan's Pokemon.
You're right. My apologies for the slip. Jordan's Pokemon would be the source of her taunts, not Jordan herself.
No, Jordan makes a joke at my fashion, and then I retort that yes, they always get muddy, but I say that Jordan's Pokemon is always there to wash them off for me.
You sigh, a hint of resignation in your voice as you look at your mud-caked shoes. You know, you're not wrong, you say, a wry smile touching your lips. They do always seem to attract mud like magnets. But hey, you add, a playful glint in your eye, at least Jordan's Pokemon is usually around to give them a good scrub afterwards. Gotta appreciate their dedication to keeping my questionable fashion choices presentable. You glance at Lyra, who stifles a giggle. They're memorable, she offers diplomatically. Professor Juniper chuckles softly. It seems you have quite the dynamic with Jordan and her Pokemon. You shrug. It's a constant. You sigh, a hint of resignation in your voice as you look at your mud-caked shoes. You know, you're not wrong, you say, a wry smile touching your lips. They do always seem to attract mud like magnets.
Just then, an Aerodactyl tumbles out of the canopy and charges straight for Jordan's Pokemon.
Just as the thought of Jordan's Pokemon cleaning your shoes fades, the tranquility of the forest is shattered by a sudden commotion in the canopy above. A large, leathery form crashes through the leaves and branches, tumbling out into the open air. It's a pterodactyl, its ancient eyes wide with what looks like panic.
No, an Aerodactyl, the Pokemon.
You're absolutely right. My apologies for the prehistoric slip-up. It's an Aerodactyl, the fearsome fossil Pokemon that tumbles out of the canopy. Just as the thought of Jordan's Pokemon cleaning your shoes fades, the tranquility of the forest is shattered by a sudden commotion in the canopy above. A large, leathery form crashes through the leaves and branches, tumbling out into the open air. It's an Aerodactyl, its sharp, jagged wings catching the dim light, its piercing eyes wide with what looks like panic or disorientation. It lets out a high-pitched screech that echoes through the trees, and its gaze seems fixated on Professor Juniper's Leafeon. The Aerodactyl swoops down with surprising speed, its sharp claws extended, charging directly towards Leafeon. Leafeon, watch out, Professor Juniper exclaims, stepping forward protectively. Lyra gasps, her hand instinctively reaching for Cyndaquil's Pokeball. You, too, are caught off guard by the sudden appearance and aggressive behavior of this ancient Pokemon. What is your immediate reaction? Do you send out Carnivine or Bellsprout to defend Leafeon? Do you try to intercept the Aerodactyl yourself? Or do you wait to see how Professor Juniper and Leafeon handle the unexpected attack?
Jordan's Azumarill hydro pumps it back into the canopy the way it comes, and everything has an awkward silence as we look at each other confused.
Just as the Aerodactyl lunges towards Leafeon, a powerful jet of water erupts from seemingly nowhere, slamming into the ancient Pokémon with tremendous force. The hydro pump, unmistakable in its power and origin, sends the Aerodactyl careening backward, crashing back into the dense canopy from which it emerged with a loud thrashing of wings and snapping branches. The sudden and unexpected intervention leaves everyone in stunned silence. You, Lyra, and even Professor Juniper exchange bewildered glances. Leafeon remains poised, its leafy fur slightly damp, looking just as surprised as the rest of you. The only sound now is the rustling of leaves high above as the Aerodactyl presumably recovers and flies away. The air is thick with confusion. What? What was that? Lyra asks, her voice hushed. Professor Juniper looks equally perplexed. That was definitely a hydro pump, and a very powerful one at that. She glances around, as if expecting to see the source. You too scan the surrounding trees, trying to make sense of the unseen attack. The precision and power suggest a trained Pokémon, but there's no sign of a trainer. Then, a familiar, smug voice echoes through the trees, laced with a hint of annoyance. Honestly, that overgrown lizard was about to ruin my perfectly good nap. Honestly, some Pokémon have no sense of decency. The voice is undeniably Jordan's. It seems she, or at least her Azumarill, is nearby and has just unexpectedly come to your, or rather Leafeon's, defense. The awkward silence stretches as you all process this unexpected turn of events. Jordan, the source of constant taunts, has just saved you from a potentially dangerous encounter. What do you say or do in response to this surprising intervention? Do you call out to Jordan, express your thanks, however grudgingly, or remain silent, still trying to understand what just happened?
I start a play battle and say, Bellsprout, use Razor Leaf. But he doesn't hit her. He just sends it towards Jordan's Pokemon and they start a duel.
The lingering awkwardness of Jordan's unexpected rescue hangs in the air for a moment. Then, with a sudden burst of energy, you decide to break the tension in a way that feels natural to you, a playful challenge. All right, since we seem to have an audience, you call out, your voice carrying into the trees. How about a little warm-up battle? Just for fun, without waiting for a response, you turn to Bellsprout. Bellsprout, let's go. Razor Leaf. Bellsprout, always eager for a battle, bounces forward, its leafy head whipping back and forth as sharp green leaves materialize around it. With a determined cry, it launches a volley of razor leaves, not directly at where you suspect Jordan or her Azumarill might be, but rather in a way that seems to be a general challenge, the leaves slicing through the air towards the dense foliage. Almost instantly, a playful but firm voice retorts from the trees. Oh, you think you can just start a battle whenever you want? Fine by me. Azumarill, let's show them how a real Pokémon battles. There's a splash and a ripple in a nearby unseen puddle, and then a powerful water gun shoots out from the foliage, intercepting Bellsprout's Razor Leaf. The water jet disperses the sharp leaves in a flurry of droplets. The battle has begun. Even though you can't see Jordan or her Azumarill clearly, the challenge has been accepted. Professor Juniper watches with a knowing smile. Ah, the familiar competitive spirit. Lyra looks intrigued, ready to see how this impromptu duel unfolds. Bellsprout bounces excitedly, ready for round 2. What is your next move? How do you command Bellsprout to engage Azumarill, keeping in mind you can't see your opponent directly?
I say, Bellsprout, sleep powder. And Jordan says, as Azumarill...
All right, Bellsprout, let's try a different approach. You call out. Use *** sleep powder. Aim for the general area where that water gun came from. Bellsprout nods its leafy head and begins to shake, releasing a cloud of fine green powder into the air. The breeze, though gentle, carries the sleep powder towards the unseen location of Jordan's Azumarill. The hope is that the powder will drift through the foliage and reach the water-type Pokémon, putting it to sleep and ending the surprise attack. You, Lyra, and Professor Juniper watch with anticipation, curious to see if the sleep powder will reach its target. The leaves rustle slightly in the area where the water gun originated, but there's no immediate indication of whether the attack was successful. A moment of silence hangs in the air, broken only by the chirping of distant bird Pokémon. Then, Jordan's voice calls out, a hint of annoyance in her tone. Oh, you think that's going to work? Azumarill is way too agile for some sleepy dust. Suddenly, another water gun erupts from the foliage, this time aimed lower, sweeping across the ground where Bellsprout is standing. Bellsprout will need to react quickly to avoid the incoming water attack. What do you command it to do?
Bellsprout gets hit with the water gun, and then I tell it to use Vine Whip, and it grabs Azumarill by the feet and drags her out of her hiding spot.
Bellsprout, watch out. You yell, but the water gun is too fast. The jet of water slams into Bellsprout, knocking it back a step and leaving its leafy body dripping. It shakes its head, looking slightly dazed, but still determined. All right, Bellsprout, you command quickly. Use Vine Whip. Target that area where the water came from and grab whatever you can. Bellsprout's vines shoot out with surprising speed and accuracy. They lash through the foliage, and after a moment of rustling, one of the vines wraps tightly around something solid. With a grunt of effort, Bellsprout pulls back, dragging a surprised-looking Marill out of its hiding spot. The Marill tumbles onto the path, its large, round eyes wide with shock. It seems it was the one who launched the water gun, not an Azumarill, as Jordan had implied. Jordan's voice calls out, now laced with indignation. Hey! Cheating. That's not fair. You now have a clear view of your opponent, a single, rather startled Marill. Bellsprout stands poised, its vine still wrapped around the small water-type Pokemon. What is your next move? Do you continue the battle with the Marill, or do you address Jordan's accusation of cheating?
Jordan tells her Marill to use Bounce, and it goes into the air, and then I tell Bellsprout to use Sleep Powder again as it comes down.
Marill, use Bounce. Jordan's voice commands, filled with urgency. The Marill, recovering quickly from its surprise, obeys instantly. It bounces energetically on its large tail, launching itself high into the air. It soars upwards, a small blue ball against the dim, overcast sky, making it a difficult target for a ground-based attack. Bellsprout, quick! You shout. Use Sleep Powder again. Aim high, right where it's coming down. Bellsprout nods, its leafy head swiveling to track the airborne Marill. It shakes vigorously, releasing another cloud of fine green sleep powder into the air. The hope is that the powder will linger in the Marill's descent path, lulling it to sleep before it can execute another attack. The Marill reaches the peak of its bounce and begins to descend. The sleep powder drifts upwards, creating a hazy green cloud in its path. It's a close call. Will the Marill fly through the powder and succumb to its effects, or will it manage to land and launch another attack? You, Lyra, and Professor Juniper watch with bated breath, the outcome of this unexpected aerial encounter hanging in the balance. Jordan's voice is silent, presumably as she watches anxiously to see if your strategy will work.
Use Pokemon mechanics to determine if that will work.
Alright, let's analyze this using Pokemon mechanics. Sleep Powder accuracy. Sleep Powder has a base accuracy of 75%. However, various factors can influence whether it hits. Type effectiveness. There's no type immunity or...
No, I mean, in a video game, can you use Sleep Powder on an airborne Pokemon?
You're right to consider the game mechanics. In the Pokemon games, *** Sleep Powder can indeed affect airborne Pokemon. Flying-type Pokemon are not immune to grass-type status moves like Sleep Powder. The success in the game would then depend on the accuracy of Sleep Powder, 75%, and...
No, I mean, can Sleep Powder hit a target that's using Bounce?
You're absolutely right to press on the game mechanics. My apologies for the slight narrative convenience earlier. In the Pokemon games, a Pokemon using Bounce is indeed vulnerable during its descent on the second turn. While it's airborne on the first turn and avoids most attacks, it becomes a target again as it comes down to strike. Therefore, your strategy of using Sleep Powder as Marill descended from Bounce is a valid and potentially successful tactic according to the game mechanics. The Sleep Powder would have a chance to hit the descending Marill, just as it played out in our story. Thanks for keeping me honest and ensuring we're grounded in the established rules of the Pokemon world. Now, with the sleeping Marill at your feet, what do you do? The unexpected battle has created a lull in your journey and a strange alliance, or at least non-aggression, with Jordan. How do you proceed?
I say, Bellsprout, use tackle.
All right, Bellsprout, you command, seizing the opportunity while Maril is vulnerable. Use tackle. Let's end this quickly. Bellsprout bounces forward with surprising speed, its small, round body hurtling towards the sleeping Maril. It slams into the water-type Pokemon with a solid thud. Maril lets out a small, muffled cry as it's struck, and a visible tremor runs through its body. However, it remains asleep, though clearly having taken some damage. Jordan's voice calls out, sounding annoyed. Hey, you can't just attack a sleeping Pokemon like that. Professor Juniper raises an eyebrow. While it might seem unsporting in a formal battle, this was an unexpected encounter in the wild. Disabling a potential threat quickly can be a prudent strategy. Lyra nods in agreement. Yeah, it attacked first. Bellsprout stands poised, ready for another command. Maril is still asleep, but has clearly been hit. What is your next move? Do you have Bellsprout attack again, or do you decide to take a different approach now that the immediate threat and playful battle seems to be over?
Carnivine attacks Bellsprout from the side and they start wrestling, and Meryl wakes up and the battle's over.
Just as you're about to give Bellsprout another command, Carnivine ambles over, its leafy vines playfully nudging Bellsprout from the side. Bellsprout, always up for a bit of friendly roughhousing, responds in kind, and soon the two grass-type Pokemon are engaged in a miniature wrestling match right there on the path. Vines wrap around leafy bodies, and Bellsprout bounces playfully, momentarily forgetting the sleeping Maril. The commotion of the sudden wrestling match jostles the Maril. Its eyelids flutter open, and it blinks sleepily, looking around in confusion. It sees Bellsprout and Carnivine rolling around, seemingly more interested in each other than in continuing a battle. Maril sits up, shakes its head groggily, and looks from the wrestling grass types to you, Lyra, and Professor Juniper. The aggressive edge it had earlier seems to have completely vanished, replaced by a bewildered expression. Jordan's voice calls out, a bit less confrontational now. Hey Maril, you okay? Maril looks in the direction of Jordan's voice, then back at your group. The tension in the air seems to dissipate with the unexpected shift in focus. The playful wrestling of your Pokemon has inadvertently brought an end to the impromptu battle. What do you do now that Maril is awake and the fighting has stopped? Do you address Jordan, try to interact with Maril again, or simply continue on your journey?
Lyra gets excited. Lyra really likes when we battle. For some reason, it sparks something inside of her.
Lyra's eyes light up, a genuine smile spreading across her face as she watches Carnivine and Bellsprout's playful wrestling match. The brief but intense exchange with Maril seems to have ignited a spark of excitement within her. Wow, she exclaims, her earlier unease about the dark sky completely forgotten. That was so cool. The way Bellsprout used sleep powder, and then Carnivine just jumped in. You guys are awesome. Her enthusiasm is infectious. She looks at you with a newfound admiration. I knew battling was supposed to be exciting, but seeing it up close like that, it's amazing. She glances down at Cyndaquil, a thoughtful expression on her face. Maybe we should do some training later, Cyndaquil. Cyndaquil chirps in agreement, a tiny flame flaring on its back. Professor Juniper observes Lyra's reaction with a warm smile. It's wonderful to see your enthusiasm, Lyra. The bond between a trainer and their Pokemon, and the thrill of a well-fought battle is truly something special. Even Jordan's voice, when it speaks again, has lost some of its earlier sharpness. Yeah, well, Maril wasn't exactly at its best. But you got lucky with that sleep powder. There's a grudging respect in her tone. The atmosphere has shifted from tense and uncertain to something more energized, thanks to the brief battle and Lyra's enthusiastic response. What do you say or do in response to Lyra's excitement and Jordan's comment? Do you acknowledge their words, address Maril, or simply take this opportunity to continue your journey?
I say, are you crazy? Did you see that hydro pump? We didn't even see you behind us.
You turn towards the direction of Jordan's voice, a mixture of disbelief and genuine surprise in your tone. Are you crazy? You exclaim. Did you see that hydro pump? It came out of nowhere. We didn't even see you back there. You just saved Leafin. Your surprise is evident. Jordan's constant teasing had painted a picture of rivalry, not unexpected assistance. Lyra nods in agreement, still buzzing from the excitement. Yeah, that was amazing. You just, whoosh, saved the day. Professor Juniper looks thoughtful. Indeed, Jordan. That was a remarkably well-aimed and powerful hydro pump. Thank you. Her tone is sincere, acknowledging the unexpected help. The silence that follows is thick with unspoken questions. Why was Jordan there? Why did she help? And what does this sudden act of assistance mean for your dynamic? Jordan's voice finally breaks the silence, a hint of...
Oh no, Jordan has always been there. Remember she walked up and said, "Where you think you going without me?" Remember, she's with us.
You're absolutely right. My memory is still a bit foggy this morning. Jordan isn't a disembodied voice. She and her Meryl are physically present with your group. Let's rewind that slightly and correct the scene. Just as the Aerodactyl swoops towards Leafeon, a powerful jet of water erupts from behind you and slams into the...
Oh no, we're good. We can continue. We'll just add it in. So Juniper commends Jordan for saving Leafeon, and Juniper decides we need to find somewhere to camp for a while. And we had a lot going on today to process.
Excellent. Thanks for the clarification. We'll seamlessly weave Jordan's presence back into the narrative. So, after the Aerodactyl is sent crashing back into the canopy by Meryl's hydro pump, you turn to see Jordan standing a short distance behind you, arms crossed, with a characteristic smirk on her face and a slightly winded Meryl beside her. Honestly...
No, we have to resume where we left off. Me and Jordan already battled with our Bellsprout and used sleep powder, and they woke up. We have to continue, and Juniper tells us we need to find somewhere to camp for the evening.
Ah, you're right. We got a little sidetracked with the Aerodactyl and Jordan's reappearance. Let's get back on track to where we were before that interruption. Resuming the narrative. The playful wrestling match between Carnivine and Bellsprout had just ended, and the previously sleeping Meryl had woken up, looking bewildered by the sudden lack of aggression. Jordan was standing nearby, observing the scene with a mixture of annoyance and her usual competitive edge. Professor Juniper, having witnessed the brief but eventful encounter, now looks around at the fading light filtering through the dense canopy. The heavy, dark sky of the morning has given way to the deeper shadows of late afternoon. "All right, everyone," she says, her voice carrying a note of practicality. "The sun will be setting soon, and this part of the forest looks like it could become quite disorienting in the dark. It would be wise for us to find a suitable place to camp for the night." She scans the surrounding area, her gaze lingering on a small clearing a short distance off the path. "That clearing looks relatively safe and open. We should make camp there before nightfall." Lyra nods in agreement, looking a little tired. "Camping sounds like a good idea. I'm starting to get a bit worn out." Cyndaquil yawns, a tiny puff of smoke escaping its snout. Jordan shrugs, though there's no real objection in her tone. "Fine by me, as long as there are no creepy bug-type Pokemon crawling around." Meryl shudders slightly at the thought. "You also agree, the idea of a rest after the day's strange encounter's appealing." "Sounds good, Professor," you say. "That clearing looks like a decent spot." And so the decision is made. You, Lyra, Jordan, Professor Juniper, and your Pokemon begin to make your way towards the small clearing that Juniper has identified as your campsite for the night. As you walk towards the clearing, what are your thoughts or actions? Do you help gather firewood, set up sleeping arrangements, or perhaps keep an eye out for any potential nighttime disturbances?
We make a fire, and Juniper pulls out some supplies that we can eat, and we spend the night just sitting there around the campfire, just talking back and forth, and that'll be the end of this episode. We'll resume later. Yeah.
The small clearing proves to be a welcome respite as dusk begins to settle over the forest. Professor Juniper efficiently gathers some fallen branches and, with the help of her Leafeon, quickly gets a crackling fire going in the center of the clearing. The flames cast dancing shadows on the surrounding trees, pushing back the encroaching darkness and creating a cozy, warm atmosphere. From her backpack, Juniper produces a surprisingly well-stocked collection of camping supplies, some simple but nourishing food, mess kits, and a few bedrolls. Everyone gathers around the fire, the warmth, a comforting presence against the cool evening air. As you eat, a comfortable silence falls over the group, punctuated by the crackling of the fire and the soft sounds of nocturnal Pokémon stirring in the distance. Eventually, conversations begin to drift amongst you. Lyra shares her excitement about the earlier battle, still buzzing with adrenaline. She asks you about some of your past adventures and the different Pokémon you've encountered. Jordan, surprisingly, joins in the conversation, though her comments are still laced with her characteristic sarcasm. She teases you about your battling style, but also grudgingly admits that Bellsprout's sleep powder was a clever move. She even shares a few slightly exaggerated tales of her own battling prowess. Professor Juniper offers insightful observations about the local Pokémon and the unusual atmosphere of the forest. She reiterates the importance of reaching the injured Pokémon quickly and expresses a quiet concern about the strange weather patterns you've been experiencing. You share your own thoughts and experiences, enjoying the camaraderie around the campfire. Carnivine and Bellsprout curl up near the warmth of the flames, while Celebi hovers playfully nearby, occasionally showering the group with a few shimmering spores that create a feeling of peacefulness. Marill rests contentedly beside Jordan, occasionally letting out a soft Mari. Leafeon settles down beside Professor Juniper, its leafy fur blending seamlessly with the surrounding foliage. The hours pass by in comfortable conversation and shared silence under the watchful eyes of the forest. As the fire begins to dwindle and the first stars peek through the breaks in the heavy cloud cover overhead, a sense of quiet anticipation for the challenges ahead settles over the group. With yawns and stretches, everyone eventually settles into their bedrolls around the dying embers of the fire, the sounds of the forest lulling you to sleep. End of episode. We'll resume our adventure in the morning, ready to face whatever the next day in the mysterious forest holds.
That was great. Thanks. We'll resume later. That was really good.
You're very welcome. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I felt like we really captured the atmosphere and the dynamic between the characters. I'm looking forward to continuing the adventure when you're ready. Just let me know when you'd like to resume.
Is there anything you particularly liked about that episode?
That's a great question. Reflecting on the episode, a few things stood out to me. The unexpected team-up of sorts with Jordan, her sudden intervention to save Leafeon and then her begrudgingly joining the group, added a layer of complexity and humour to the dynamic. It subverted the typical rival trope and created an interesting tension. Lyra's genuine enthusiasm for battling. Her reaction to the brief encounter with Marill felt like a real turning point for her character, showing a burgeoning interest in the core aspects of the Pokémon world. The blend of gameplay mechanics and narrative. We successfully integrated elements like Sleep Powder's effectiveness and the strategic use of Pokémon abilities into the story in a way that felt natural. The shift in atmosphere. The transition from the eerie, dark morning to the camaraderie around the campfire at night created a nice emotional arc within the episode. Your creative problem-solving. Using Celebi's spores to avoid the initial Pikachu encounter and then Bellsprout's unexpected wrestling tumble down the hill were both memorable and in-character moments. Overall, I felt it was an episode that balanced action, character development, and a touch of humor, all while progressing the journey towards the dragon's teeth. What were some of your favorite parts?
I liked everything after Jordan intervened and saved Leafeon. That was great.
Ah, excellent. I'm really glad you enjoyed that part. I felt it created a nice little turning point in the dynamic between your group and Jordan. Her unexpected assistance, followed by her classic Sunday-like explanation, added a fun layer of complexity to the story. It also opened up some interesting possibilities for future interactions, and perhaps even a reluctant camaraderie down the line. The subsequent camping scene, with the group settling down for the night and the conversations around the campfire, felt like a good way to end the episode, allowing for some character bonding and a moment of relative peace before whatever challenges lie ahead. Thanks for letting me know what resonated with you. It helps me understand what kind of moments you find most engaging as we continue the story.
Okay, we'll continue next time. Thanks. See ya.
Sounds great. I'm looking forward to our next session. Have a good one, and see you then.